So when Trump first announced that he was immediately, unilaterally pulling out of Syria, he hadn't consulted our allies, he hadn't talked to NATO, and Turkey is a NATO force. He hadn't talked to the Europeans. Turkey wants to be part of the EU. He didn't consult the others in the region. He didn't talk to his Joint Chiefs. He hadn't talked to his Secretary of Defense. When Trump announced this by Twitter, a couple of hours later, I went on the air and I said, okay, here's what this looks like to me. Trump has a hotel or a shopping center, I guess it is, a Trump shopping center in Istanbul, in Turkey. Trump wants to build more buildings in Turkey. Trump and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, need cash, and they have on multiple occasions gone to both Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, who are, like this, to ask for money. And that money has been or may well be forthcoming. We really don't know and probably won't until we start seeing tax returns and things. But we know that those conversations have been going on. Saudi Arabia is really upset because Erdogan, the head guy in Turkey, has been yelling loudly about Khashoggi being murdered in the Saudi embassy or consulate in Turkey. And they want to shut him up. They want Erdogan to stop talking about Khashoggi. And so Trump goes to Erdogan and says, hey, you got to stop talking about this American, resident journalist, Washington Post journalist that was murdered by the Saudis, because, I'm trying to get money from the Saudis, and we're trying to do business with the Saudis. And, what do you want from me? And Erdogan says, well, first of all, I'd like to buy $3 million worth of advanced missiles. And secondly, I'd like you to kidnap that cleric that is living in the Poconos in Pennsylvania with a green card. I'd like you to kidnap him and ship him back here so we can torture him and kill him, because we think that he was one of the guys behind the unsuccessful military coup that happened to Erdogan when he was out of town. And so Trump says, okay, cool, we'll do that. And he puts into motion the sale of the weapons, which, by the way, went through last week. And he cuts this deal to kidnap the cleric. Well, that gets into the press, and it blows up in his face. So he has to go back to Erdogan and say, okay, what else do you want? I'll give you what you want. Just, let me have give me another building in Turkey, and let me do some business with the Saudis and the Emiratis here without yelling about this reporter. And so Erdogan says, well, I've been wanting to kill the Kurds in northern Syria. I've been trying to kill the Kurds in southern Turkey for some time. And, let me do it. And so Trump finally says, okay, cool. Now, I laid that out purely as a conspiracy theory. I said, this is just conjecture. This is my opinion of what I think is happening. And now we're discovering that, it was December 14th when Trump announced this. On December 13th, he had this phone call with Erdogan. And Mattis and Pompeo had organized all these talking points for the phone call about how we're not going to get out of Syria, we're not going to give you the Kurds, we're not going to do this, or if we do get out of Syria, it's going to happen over a period of months, and we're going to bring other allies in. The French are there right now along with us. We're going to have our allies play a role in this, and we're not going to pull out in a way that was going to allow you to go in and slaughter the Kurds. If for no other reason that the Kurds in that part of northern Syria have about 3,000 ISIS fighters in their jails, in their prisons, which is half the total ISIS fighting force in Syria. And if the Kurds are knocked down, ISIS doubles in size in Syria overnight. Those were the talking points that Pompeo and Mattis gave to Trump. And Trump gets on the phone with Erdogan, and Erdogan is like, Donald, you've got to get out of Syria. You said you would do it. It was a campaign promise. You said you'd do it when ISIS is defeated. Why haven't you done it? And Donald said, oh, well, okay, I'll do it. And Erdogan was so shocked, according to the reports now that just have come out, Erdogan was so shocked by this that he was like, oh, well, you don't have to do it that fast. Trump was like, no, I'm going to do it that fast. And so now Erdogan, this from the Washington Post on December 21, Erdogan says he's going to delay a planned offensive against Kurdish forces in Syria's northeast. He said Turkish military is planning to launch the offensive in several months with the aim of, quote, eliminating the Kurdish YPG, the People's Protection Units. This is, he's going to have his genocide. He's going to have his slaughter. The Kurds have a long semi-democratic tradition. They have been allies to the West for a long, long time. In 1917, we sold them out right after World War I. They thought they were going to get an independent Kurdistan. Woodrow Wilson didn't fight for that. They didn't get it. So now you've got Kurds in southern Turkey, in southwestern Iran, in northern, northwestern, and western Iraq, and in northern Syria. This little region here where all these four countries come together. And in 1975, the Kurds had cut a deal with the Shah of Iran, right, who was our buddy. So the Kurds were on our side. And then we betrayed them in 75. This was Jerry Ford, by facilitating a deal between Saddam Hussein and the Shah of Iran. And then Saddam started going after the Kurds in his own country, in Iraq. And then in 1991, George Herbert Walker Bush came out and gave a speech, a public speech, in which he called on the Kurds in the south and the Shiites in the north, of Iraq, and the Shiites in the south, called upon them to rise up against Saddam. 1991. And they did. They came out in the streets, they came out with their guns, they took on Saddam's forces, fully expecting that the U.S. would come in and, at least with air power, support them. And George Herbert Walker Bush, after giving this tough speech, because he's such a tough guy, decided he wasn't going to do anything. And the Kurds were slaughtered, as were the Shiites in the south. The best estimates are between 100,000 and 300,000 people were slaughtered in that week by Saddam Hussein in the north and the south. And then most recently, there was supposed to be the Trump administration. Last year, this was actually negotiated during the Obama administration, there was supposed to be a referendum in Iraq for semi-autonomous Kurdish area in northern Iraq, northwestern Iraq, the Iraqi Kurdistan. And we said, yeah, cool, we'll support that. And so the Kurds were getting all ready for this and making it happen and talking about it. And then a couple of months ago, actually last year, 2017, the Trump administration said, we don't care. And so the Shiite government, the new Iran-aligned government, and the Iranians don't like the Kurds either. They've got their own Kurdish problem. The Iranian government, or the Iraqi government rolled tanks in and killed a bunch of Kurds in that region. So we have betrayed the Kurds like over and over and over again. And we're betraying them again. This is a terrible, terrible thing. Now, there are people who say, oh, yeah, well, we should get out of Syria. I agree. We never should have gone in the first place. But we're there. We made this alliance with the Kurds, and we and the French are basically the only people who are protecting them. And I think Joan Walsh really nailed this in a piece for The Nation magazine, where she said, I don't know how anyone could possibly think Trump should pull the United States out of Syria without consulting his national security team or our allies. And then she gives this perfect metaphor. She says, if a monkey flings its poop and it hits a crazed gunman in the face and stops a murderer, we would not make that monkey the police chief. President Trump does not deserve praise for a policy decision driven by God knows what, but certainly not careful consultation with others and sober deliberation. Well, it's a policy decision driven by Trump's own financial interests. He wants Turkey to stop talking about Khashoggi, and he wants the Saudis and the Emiratis to give him and his son-in-law money, and he wants to build another building, or he wants to maintain his properties in Turkey. His son went hunting in Turkey last year, big game hunting, with some millionaire probably associated with the next Trump property. So, this is just a cluster. I mean, this is just terrible what's happening here. And the fact that Trump is doing these things for his own personal economic interest is, in my opinion, impeachable. Spread the word. Thanks so much for supporting our program. I hope this has been useful information to you.